Luke had spent most of his life working under the open sky, where silence spoke louder than people. His ranch sat miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by dry grass, tall hills, and long, lonely trails. He liked the quiet life, the kind where a man could hear his own thoughts clearly. But on one cold evening, as the sun began to fall behind the hills, something unusual caught his attention. He was riding back home after checking on his cattle when he noticed a small figure sitting near an old, abandoned trail. At first, he thought it might be a lost traveler resting for a moment. But as he rode closer, he noticed how still the figure was. The wind blew gently, lifting some dust around her, but she didn't move, didn't look up, and didn't even try to protect herself from the cold air. Luke stopped his horse a few steps away and slowly got down. He didn't want to scare whoever it was. When he walked closer, he finally saw her clearly, a young woman with torn clothes, messy hair, and a thin cloth covering most of her upper body. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she was trying to disappear. She looked so tired and weak that Luke wondered how long she had been sitting there. "Ma'am?" he called softly. "Are you all right?" The woman didn't look up. Her voice came out so soft that Luke barely heard it. "I'm not clean. Please leave me." Her voice carried more than fear. It carried deep shame, something that made Luke stop where he stood. She wasn't only cold or hungry. Something inside her was hurting too much. Luke kneeled beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "You look like you need help." "I won't harm you. I just want to get you somewhere warm." She shook her head slowly. "I can't. I'm not clean." Luke didn't understand what she meant yet, but he could see she was close to collapsing. Her breathing was uneven, and her hands were trembling. The cloth around her seemed to be hiding something, but he didn't try to lift it. Instead, he took off his thick ranch coat and gently placed it around her shoulders. For the first time, she reacted. She looked up with frightened eyes, almost expecting him to regret touching her. But Luke only smiled softly. "You can wear that until we reach my cabin," he said. She didn't answer, but she didn't resist either. That was enough for Luke. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was, and helped her onto his horse. She held the coat tightly, as if she was afraid it would disappear. Luke walked beside the horse, making sure she stayed balanced. The sky darkened quickly, and the cold air grew sharper. By the time they reached Luke's ranch, she was barely awake. He opened the cabin door slowly so the warm air inside wouldn't startle her. The small cabin was simple. A wooden table, a fireplace, a few chairs, and 2 rooms. But it felt safe, especially compared to the cold outside. Luke helped her sit near the fire. She still refused to look up or let go of the cloth covering her shoulders. He placed a cup of warm water near her and stepped back to give her space. After a long moment, she took a small sip. Her hands shook so hard that Luke pretended not to notice. He didn't want her to feel embarrassed. "My name is Luke," he said gently. "What's yours?" She hesitated. She looked as if saying her name might bring trouble. Finally, she whispered, "Anna." "That's a good name," Luke replied, smiling. "You're safe here, Anna." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked around the cabin nervously, like she was expecting someone to burst in and drag her out. Luke noticed how she kept the cloth tightly wrapped around her arms, hiding them as if letting anyone see would be dangerous. He offered her some food, a bowl of soup he had made earlier. She took it slowly, afraid to spill anything. When she lifted her hand to adjust the bowl, the cloth slipped a little, revealing a small part of her skin. Luke saw dark marks, not fresh wounds, but something old, something that must have hurt a long time ago. He didn't stare. He looked away immediately so she wouldn't feel watched. Anna noticed his reaction anyway. She quickly pulled the cloth higher, covering the marks again, and whispered, "See? I'm not clean. You shouldn't help me." Luke shook his head. "Everyone needs help sometimes. There's nothing wrong with accepting it." Anna didn't believe him. He could see it in her eyes, eyes that had seen too much judgment, too much unfairness. As the night deepened, the wind outside grew stronger. A storm was forming, and the sound of thunder made Anna jump. She grabbed the coat tightly and looked toward the door, afraid she would be thrown out now that the weather was bad. "You can stay in the spare room," Luke said calmly. "Rest. You look like you need it." She didn't move at first. She kept waiting for a condition, a warning, a demand. But Luke said nothing else. He simply pointed toward the room and stepped aside. She walked slowly, as if her feet didn't believe the floor was safe. Luke waited until she entered the room before gently closing the door. He didn't lock it. He wanted her to know she could leave whenever she wished. After she went inside, Luke stayed awake near the fire thinking about what she had said. "I'm not clean." The words echoed in his mind. What kind of life had she lived that made her say something so painful? He tried to sleep, but the sound of the storm and the memory of the dark marks on her arms kept him awake. He wondered how many days she had been alone before he found her. How long had she been hiding from people who didn't treat her right? Hours later, he heard soft movement from the spare room. Anna cracked the door open slightly and peeked out. She wasn't trying to escape. She was making sure he wasn't planning to make her leave. When she saw him sleeping lightly on the chair, she relaxed a little and went back inside. That tiny moment, that small bit of trust, made Luke's heart tighten. He hadn't done anything special, but it was clear that kindness was something rare in her life. The storm lasted until morning, and when sunlight finally came through the window, Luke got up quietly to check on her. She was still asleep, curled up under the blanket, holding the cloth beside her like it was the last piece of safety she had left. For the first time since he found her, she looked peaceful. Luke stood quietly for a moment, then walked away without waking her. He didn't know her full story yet, but one thing was certain. She wasn't leaving his ranch until she was strong again, physically and emotionally. Whatever she had been through, she would not face it alone. That morning, Luke prepared breakfast, glanced at the closed door, and promised himself silently that he would help her heal, no matter how long it took. Morning sunlight slowly entered the cabin, touching the wooden floor and warming the cold air left behind by the storm. Luke had been awake for an hour, quietly preparing breakfast so he wouldn't disturb Anna. He didn't know how long she had been running or when she last slept peacefully, so he wanted her to rest as much as she needed. After placing a pot of warm oats on the table, along with some bread and fresh water, he finally heard the soft sound of the spare room's door opening. Anna stepped out carefully, holding the cloth tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes moved across the cabin nervously, as if checking whether she was still welcome. "You can come sit," Luke said gently. "Breakfast is ready." She nodded, but didn't move immediately. She seemed unsure whether she was allowed to sit at the same table. Luke noticed her hesitation, so he pulled out a chair to make it clear. "It's fine," he said. "Please sit." Anna finally walked to the chair and sat down slowly. She kept her eyes lowered, avoiding his gaze. Luke placed a small bowl in front of her. She whispered, "Thank you," and began eating in tiny, careful bites, like someone who didn't want to be noticed. Luke didn't push her to talk. He wanted her to feel safe. He simply ate his own food and talked lightly about simple things. How the horses had behaved during the storm, how the fence near the south pasture needed fixing, and how the weather might stay clear for a few days. At first, Anna didn't respond to anything, but slowly she began to listen. Her shoulders eased a bit, and she relaxed enough to lift her head occasionally. After they finished eating, Anna tried to stand and help clean the dishes. Her legs wobbled, and she grabbed the table for support. Luke quickly stepped closer. "You don't have to do anything today," he said. "Just rest." But Anna shook her head. "I want to help. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden," Luke replied softly. "You're recovering." She hesitated, but finally accepted his words. Together they washed the dishes. Luke washed, while Anna dried them slowly. Halfway through, she reached to place a cup on the shelf, and the edge of her cloth slipped again. More of her arm showed, dark patches, cracked skin, and what looked like old burns. She froze instantly, her breath stopping as if she had been caught doing something wrong. Luke continued washing the dish in his hand as if he hadn't seen anything. He didn't want her to feel ashamed, but his heart felt heavy. The wounds looked painful, not only physically, but emotionally. Anna quickly pulled the cloth back and whispered, "I told you. I'm not clean." Luke placed the dish down and turned to her with calm eyes. "Those marks don't make you unclean, Anna. They only show you've been through something hard." She didn't believe him. He could see it. She stepped back slightly, holding the cloth tighter, as if protecting herself from the world. Luke didn't push. Instead, he changed the subject and talked about something simple, giving her a chance to breathe. Later in the day, Anna followed him outside to help with small tasks. She walked carefully, still weak, but she wanted to show she could contribute something. Luke allowed her to help only with light things, collecting a few eggs, feeding the chickens, handing him tools. He made sure nothing strained her body. As they worked, Luke kept the conversation gentle. "Where did you learn to take care of animals?" he asked, noticing how comfortable she seemed around them. "My mother used to keep chickens," Anna replied quietly. "Before everything changed." Luke didn't ask what changed. He waited for her to share if she ever felt ready. After a few minutes, she spoke again, her voice soft. "I worked at the town laundry house. The owner, he didn't care about safety. Once boiling water spilled on me." Luke felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice controlled. "I'm sorry that happened." Anna looked down. "The burns didn't heal right. I had to keep working because he said we couldn't fall behind. People saw my scars and called me unclean. They didn't even let me explain." Luke stopped what he was doing and looked at her carefully. "Scars don't define who you are." "They did," she whispered, "at least to them." Luke could see she wasn't just hiding physical scars. She was hiding years of being judged unfairly. As they continued their tasks, she suddenly flinched when a chicken fluttered too close. Luke realized she was easily startled by sudden movements. It wasn't fear of animals. It was fear of people, fear of being yelled at or hurt. "You're safe here," Luke said gently. Anna nodded, but he could tell she still didn't fully believe it. In the afternoon, the sun grew warm, and Anna helped him bring firewood inside. As she bent down to pick up a small log, the cloth again loosened, showing more of the burns. She dropped the log quickly and stepped back as if ashamed to even exist. "I know you saw," she murmured. Luke didn't deny it. "Yes, I saw, and it doesn't change anything." "People always look away," she said. "They stare, then they look away fast, like they don't want to see me." Luke took a slow breath. "I'm not looking away because I'm disgusted. I'm looking away because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." Anna stared at him, confused. No one had ever explained kindness to her like that. When they returned inside, Luke placed a small wooden box on the table and opened it. Inside were clean cloths, healing ointment, and warm water in a bowl. He didn't push them toward her. He simply set them down. "This is for you," he said. "Use them when you're ready. You don't have to show me anything." Anna stared at the items silently. She didn't touch them, but something in her eyes softened. She realized Luke wasn't trying to force her into anything. He was giving her the choice she never had before. Hours passed before Anna walked toward the table again. Luke stayed in the other room, pretending not to notice. He heard her quiet breaths, the soft sound of cloth being untied, and the gentle movement of water. She was cleaning her skin slowly, carefully, the way she should have been allowed to from the beginning. When she finished, she wrapped the cloth around herself again and sat quietly on the edge of the bed. Luke approached the doorway and spoke softly so he wouldn't startle her. "Feel better?" She nodded without looking up. "A little." "That's good," he said. "Take your time. Healing isn't quick." She finally glanced at him, and for the first time her eyes held a small bit of trust. As evening approached, she helped him prepare dinner. She wasn't shaking as much now. Her breaths were more steady. Her voice wasn't as fragile. During the meal, she asked him a question, her first question since arriving. "Why are you being kind to me?" Luke looked at her honestly. "Because everyone deserves kindness, and because you didn't deserve what happened to you." Anna didn't answer, but the cloth around her shoulders loosened just a little, as if she no longer needed to grip it so tightly. That night, when she went to the spare room, she paused at the doorway and whispered, "Thank you for not treating me the way others did." Luke nodded. "Good night, Anna. Rest well." When she closed the door, he heard a very soft sound from inside, the sound of someone letting out a breath they had been holding for years. Anna wasn't healed yet, but she had taken her first true step toward trusting someone again, and Luke knew that step mattered more than anything else. The days slowly blended into a gentle routine on Luke's ranch. Anna woke up early each morning, still wrapping the cloth around her shoulders, but she no longer hid inside her room. She helped set the table, fed the chickens, or swept the floor while Luke worked outdoors. She didn't talk much, yet her silence no longer felt frightened, just careful, like someone learning how to breathe again without fear. Luke noticed small changes every day. She walked with a steadier step. She ate a little more each meal. She flinched less at sudden movements. She still hid her scars, but she wasn't shrinking into herself the way she had on the first day. But there was still a wall inside her, something she wasn't ready to open. One evening, the sky turned golden as the sun set behind the hills. Luke had spent the day mending a broken fence post, and Anna had insisted on helping by handing him nails, water, or tools. She didn't say much, but Luke appreciated the quiet company. When they returned to the cabin, Anna tried to wash up before making dinner. Luke heard her moving around the small washroom, pouring water into a basin. He didn't interfere. He had learned that giving her space was one of the best ways to help her heal. But suddenly he heard a sharp, fearful cry. Not loud, but enough to make him drop the wooden plank he was carrying. He rushed to the washroom and paused at the doorway so he wouldn't scare her. Anna was standing frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the basin. The cloth she always wore had slipped from her shoulder and fallen into the water, too wet to pick up. Without it covering her, the scars on her arms and shoulder were fully exposed. The burns ran across her skin in uneven shapes, some areas darker, some lighter. The skin had healed long ago but left rough patches behind. It wasn't something she could hide now, not with the cloth soaking in the water. Her face went pale. Her breathing shook. "I didn't mean to drop it," she whispered, backing into a corner as if she expected him to shout at her. "Please, please don't look at me." Her voice trembled in a way Luke had never heard before. Her hands shook so violently she had to press them against the wall to steady herself. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she didn't try to wipe them. "I told you," she murmured, her voice cracking. "I'm not clean." Luke didn't rush toward her. He didn't speak quickly or reach out his hand. He simply knelt down on the floor a few feet away, lowering himself so she wouldn't feel trapped. He made his voice soft. "Anna, I'm not shocked because of your scars." She looked at him with confusion and disbelief. "Then why did you stop? Why did your face change?" Because it hurts me that you suffered alone, he said quietly. Not because of how your skin looks. Her lips parted, but she couldn't find any words. Luke continued gently. Scars don't make a person unclean. They tell a story, and yours tell me you kept going even when life wasn't kind to you. Anna turned her face away. She covered her arm with her hand, trying desperately to hide it even though her whole shoulder was exposed. She looked like someone who expected rejection at any moment. Luke stayed kneeling, his posture steady, calm, harmless. You don't have to hide from me, he said. Tears fell harder now. Everyone else looked away, she whispered. Some said I should stay far from people so they wouldn't see these marks. Luke swallowed hard. He had heard cruel things in his life, but this was different. This was a level of unfairness he couldn't fully understand. I'm not everyone else, he replied. Anna's breathing slowly slowed, but her hands still shook. She stepped carefully toward the basin, staring at the soaked cloth with helpless eyes. Luke slowly stood up and reached for a clean towel from the shelf. He held it, not to force on her, but so she could take it if she wanted. She looked at his hand for a long moment before reaching out and accepting it. Thank you, she whispered so softly he barely heard. He nodded and stepped out of the washroom to give her privacy. Anna didn't close the door fully, only halfway, almost as if she wanted to know he was nearby in case she panicked again. While she cleaned her arms and shoulder, Luke stayed in the kitchen, preparing warm water and setting out the healing ointment. He remembered how she had reacted the first time he offered help, so he didn't call her over. He simply placed the supplies on the table and returned to chopping vegetables, pretending to be busy so she wouldn't feel watched. After a while, Anna stepped out of the washroom. Her arms were wrapped in the towel, not the cloth, and some of her scars were still showing. Her eyes were red from crying, but she didn't look as terrified anymore. She stood hesitantly near the table. When she saw the ointment and clean cloths Luke had placed there, she touched the wooden chair lightly and sat down. She didn't ask for help, but she didn't hide either. Luke continued preparing dinner, speaking in a soft tone so she would feel normal, not pitied. You did good cleaning them, he said. She nodded but kept her eyes low. They still look bad? They look like scars of someone strong, he replied. Nothing bad about that. Anna took a slow breath, the kind someone takes when trying not to cry again. She placed her hands flat on the table, still wrapped in the towel. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Not of the pain, but of being seen. You don't have to hide from me, Luke said, but you can take your time. Heal at your own pace. Anna finally lifted her eyes to him. There was something new in them, something fragile but hopeful. For the first time since arriving, she seemed to believe he meant his words. Dinner that night was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Anna ate slowly, feeling the towel slide off her arm occasionally. When the scars showed, she didn't panic. She simply adjusted the towel and continued eating. Luke noticed the difference. She wasn't hiding. She was adjusting. That alone was a sign of progress. After dinner, Anna helped clean up, her movements calmer now. When she reached for a pot, the towel slipped off her shoulder completely, revealing more of her scars. She froze out of habit. But Luke didn't even pause while drying a dish. She noticed. Her breath steadied. Luke, she said softly. Yes? Are you really not bothered by all this? She asked, looking down at her arms. Not at all, he said. I'm bothered by what happened to you, but not by the scars. Her eyes softened. Nobody ever said something like that to me before? Then they should have, Luke replied. That night, as she stood near the door of the spare room, Anna hesitated. She turned slightly, her voice almost too quiet to hear. When my cloth fell earlier, she said, You didn't get angry, or look away, or tell me to cover myself fast. Why would I? Luke asked. Because that's what everyone did, she whispered. Luke walked a little closer, but stopped at a respectful distance. Anna, you're safe here. Not judged, not unwanted. Just safe. That's all. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing out slowly, the kind of breath someone releases when a heavy burden finally loosens the slightest bit. Thank you, she whispered, for staying calm, for not making me feel wrong. You're not wrong, Luke said firmly. You're human, and you're healing. Anna stepped inside the spare room, but before closing the door, she looked at him again, her eyes filled with something new, trust. The door shut softly, and Luke stood there for a long moment, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. Anna had shown her scars, not by choice, but by accident. And instead of collapsing in fear, she had allowed herself to be seen and to be comforted. It was the biggest step she had taken so far, and Luke knew that the road ahead might still be long. But she was walking it now, not alone, not afraid, and not hidden behind the cloth she once clung to. She was learning she didn't need to hide, and Luke promised himself silently that he would help her heal, no matter how many steps it took. The early morning light spread slowly across the ranch, touching the fields and turning them gold. Luke stepped outside as usual, but this morning felt different. Anna was already awake, sitting quietly on the porch steps. She held the familiar cloth in her hands, but not wrapped around her shoulders this time. Instead, it rested loosely on her lap, as if she wasn't sure she still needed it. She looked up when she heard Luke's footsteps. Her eyes weren't filled with fear like before. They looked uncertain, yes, but there was something gentler in them, something close to peace. "You're up early," Luke said. "I couldn't sleep much," she replied softly, "but not because I was scared. I think I just had too many thoughts." "Good thoughts?" he asked with a small smile. She shrugged, but there was a hint of a shy smile on her face. "Different thoughts." Luke sat a few feet away so she wouldn't feel crowded. The morning air was cool and a light breeze brushed across the porch. Anna held the cloth a little tighter, but she didn't wrap it around her shoulders. That alone meant more to Luke than she probably realized. "Anything you want to talk about?" he asked. Anna looked at the wide land before them. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "I'm scared. But it's a different kind of scared now. Not of being hurt. Not of being thrown out." She paused and took a breath. "I'm scared of what comes next." Luke understood more than she expected. "You don't have to rush anything," he said. "You take your steps when you're ready." She looked at him slowly. "I've been thinking about taking one more step today." Luke didn't push for details. He simply nodded, giving her space to continue if she wanted to. After breakfast, Luke needed to ride into town. Supplies were running low, and he had been avoiding the trip so Anna wouldn't be left alone during her earlier days. Now he felt she was stronger, but also he didn't want to leave her behind without asking. "I need to go into town," he said as he cleaned up the dishes. "It'll take a few hours. Do you want to come or stay here?" Anna thought for a long moment. The town was full of memories she wished she could erase, people staring, whispering, judging. But she also remembered something else, Luke's words the night before. "You're safe here, not judged." She swallowed and looked at him. "I want to come with you." Luke nodded gently. He didn't show surprise, though inside he felt a spark of pride. "All right, we'll go slow. If at any moment you feel uncomfortable, we turn around." Anna nodded again, holding on to the quiet courage she had built over the days. When they set off together, Anna sat behind him on the horse. She wasn't gripping the cloth this time. Instead, she held on to the saddle, steady and calm. The wind brushed against her arms, and though she tried not to think about the scars, a small part of her wondered if anyone in town would notice. Luke rode slowly, making sure she felt safe. When they reached the edge of town, Anna's grip tightened, but she didn't ask to turn back. People walked along the roads, carrying baskets or tools, doing their regular work. A few glanced at Luke and Anna, but none stared long enough to frighten her. Luke led her to the general store, then to the market area where he bought seed and supplies. Anna stood close to him, but not hiding behind him like she might have before. She walked with her back straight, her towel covering part of her arms, but not fully hiding everything. She looked nervous, but she stayed strong. As they were preparing to leave, Anna suddenly stopped. Her eyes froze on a building near the end of the street. It was the laundry house, the place she had worked, the place where her pain had begun. Luke followed her gaze and breathed quietly. "You don't have to go near it," he said. "I know," she whispered. He waited. After a moment, Anna stepped a little closer, not toward the door, but toward the memory. She stood still, her breathing deep, her shoulders tense. "I used to think this place owned me," she said softly. "Owned my fear, owned my shame." Luke waited silently. "But it doesn't anymore." She turned away from the building, her voice barely above a breath. "I don't belong to that pain now." Luke nodded. "You don't." When they mounted the horse again, Anna didn't look back. On the way home, Anna was quiet but calm. Luke didn't disturb her thoughts. When they reached the ranch, she stepped down and looked at the porch as if it were a safe harbor waiting just for her. But today, she didn't sit. Instead, she walked across the yard and stood in the sunlight. She closed her eyes and let the warmth rest on her skin. Luke watched from a short distance, giving her space. Anna opened her eyes after a moment and held out the cloth she had carried for so long. Her fingers held it gently, almost with respect for the role it once played. "This kept me hidden," she said softly. "I thought it protected me, but really, it kept me afraid." Luke walked closer slowly. "You can let it go when you're ready." Anna took a deep breath. Her hands loosened. The cloth slipped from her fingers and floated down onto the dry grass. She didn't bend to pick it up. She just watched it lie there like an old chapter finally closed. She turned to Luke. "Do I look different to you now?" He shook his head gently. "No. You looked strong before. You look strong now. The difference is, you finally see it too." Anna's eyes glistened, but not with fear. With relief, with something warm, something hopeful. The next days passed peacefully. Anna helped with chores more confidently. She walked outside without the cloth, letting her scars be part of her, not something to fear. She laughed once, a soft, shy laugh, when one of the chickens ran after Luke. The sound surprised both of them, and Luke couldn't help smiling at it. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky orange, Anna stood beside Luke while he fixed another fence. She watched him work for a while, then finally said the words she had been carrying. "When I first arrived, I didn't believe I deserved anything good. I thought my scars made me wrong. But you—" She took a slow breath. "You showed me I can still live." Luke paused, resting his arm on the fence. "You were always meant to live, Anna. You went through something hard, yes, but you didn't lose your worth." She looked down, her voice soft. "Thank you for giving me a place to feel human again." Luke smiled gently. "You did that yourself. I just made sure you were safe while you remembered." The wind blew lightly, lifting a few strands of Anna's hair. She looked out over the ranch, the open fields, the hills, the quiet space that had become her refuge. For the first time in a long time, she imagined a future without fear. When they walked back toward the cabin, Anna glanced at the cloth still lying in the grass. She didn't pick it up. She didn't even pause beside it. She walked past it with steady steps, leaving it behind like a shadow that no longer controlled her. Inside the cabin, she turned to Luke. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Luke thought for a moment. "Whatever you want to happen. Your life is yours." Anna looked around the cabin, the walls that had protected her, the fire that kept her warm, the man who had shown her patient kindness, and for the first time, she felt something strong inside her. Hope. She wasn't healed completely. Healing wasn't quick, but she wasn't broken anymore, wasn't hiding anymore, wasn't afraid of her own reflection. She was a survivor, and Luke had become the quiet strength guiding her toward a new beginning. Their future wasn't written yet, but Anna no longer feared it. She was ready to live it.